Yes, I couldn't help myself. We've been exploring Matthew together. We've recently explored Matthew 7. And here in Matthew 8, we get an account of miracle after miracle. We could actually finish the chapter, and it would just be more miracles, miracle after miracle. And the interesting thing for me today, and it just happened that this is Thanksgiving weekend here in Canada, no one, at least according to the text, no one is said to have given thanks to God in any of those situations. It's not something the author highlights. I'm sure they were quite thankful. I mean, we heard some of those miracles, casting out demons, healing the sick. But nowhere in that entire chapter, through the rest of the miracles in the chapter, is it said that anyone thanked the Lord. Interesting case study for today. I think often the text invites reflection for us. I think we can see part of our lives in the Bible in many ways. And in this one, I think for a lot of people, if you think about it, there's often been times in your own life where you've worked, maybe performed your own kind of personal miracles for someone. Something that you had to overcome to do. Maybe it was a new job. Maybe you weren't very comfortable doing something. And in response, you got, could be better. Maybe worse, right? I feel like it's something we can all relate to, this sense of giving of ourselves and not really feeling that appreciation. It may be there, but we don't quite feel it. Often, what is there to say but a little critique, some constructive criticism. We welcome constructive criticism here, by the way. If you have any, write it at the bottom of your sheet or send it in via email. But constructive criticism sometimes can be taken the wrong way, and sometimes we don't quite feel held in thankfulness. And of course, I think the other side of that coin is true for most of us as well, if we think about it. Often we find ourselves feeling quite naturally in a judgmental space. Doesn't quite sit right that moment. I don't like that. Maybe I'll say something, maybe I won't. There's enough that I don't like that I probably won't say anything. Maybe I don't get a chance, but we get into those moments of judgmentalness. And I think, in a huge way, we miss the opportunity of the moment for thankfulness. I think often we're so in that judgment, that dismissiveness, that sense of knowing better, that we miss the thankfulness of the Spirit, the thankfulness natural, I believe, to life, natural to our hearts and minds. But how could it be so natural if we act the way we do, if we feel the way we do? How could thankfulness, how could love and peace and all these things we hear about in the scriptures, not just in Christianity, but many traditions, many religions, many non-religions, as Buddhism calls itself, saying that our inherent being is joy, is peace. That God or love or consciousness or life, whatever the word for that tradition or words, is our natural core, is where we come from. How could it be distant? So how could that be true and yet it be such a struggle? Well, I think thankfulness, like joy, like peace, almost has to be eased into. It has to be accepted as we relax into non-judgmentalness, as we relax into not identifying so much with that voice in our head. It's just so true. Christ, again and again, invites people in his ministry to let go of attachments. Yes, you are hurting people. You don't have to do that. sin no more. Sounds easy. Maybe if Jesus said it to us, that would work. But in a way, that's Christ's message all the time, that we are empowered to turn away from what keeps us so anxious, so burdened. And really, it involves what he also invites again and again, which is turning to that natural sense of unity, that natural sense of love that we have when we stop identifying so much with our diversive thoughts. This idea, we center in this idea of who we are separate from other people, not realizing that even that's just another idea. Just another idea we learn. If we look at our experiences, we start to realize, oh, I'm more one with them than I may have thought. I'm maybe more one with the core of my neighbor than I am with how I behave sometimes, how I think. How could that be? Well, when we think about it, we realize that a lot of the things that are in our lives, our habits, are adopted from our families, from our society. If I was born across the street, I would have been Muslim. It would have been something else. We start to realize that a lot of what life is are these traditions that we share, we pick up, these habits, so to speak. But in a way, we're all the same, despite all those differences, because we're all picking up these habits from family, from life. What is that thing that picks up the habits? What is that thing that carries the burden of our thoughts, that fills the challenge and fills the joy, that notices the peace and love and notices the hurt and anxiety, the distractedness, the worry, for good reasons, right? Always good reasons. Have to be good reasons if we're worried about it. But what is that thing that sees this? Well, our sages say the light of life comes from God himself, herself. The light of life comes from divinity, consciousness, which is love, actually. We wouldn't do anything if it weren't for some love. You wouldn't get out of bed if you didn't love not feeling, pain because you laid in bed too long, or if you didn't love food, or didn't love work, or didn't love moving, didn't love not being bored, whatever it is. Love causes us to move. When we start to feel we don't have much love in our life, we call that depression. We call that deep despair. We don't want to move. We literally don't move. This love, this light of consciousness we all share. And although sometimes it can feel clouded over because we're so in our heads, our idea of what life means and what it means to be successful is so literal, so wordy, so physical, so full of reputation and how we judge things, that we miss that we are already whole. There's something in us already whole. Like the heart in those children shining. Already shining whole. And so I think thankfulness, we can invite it by thinking about our loved ones. And I think this is a good weekend for that kind of thankfulness. But I think thankfulness is also something we can invite more wholly by easing into a mode of love, peace, of thanksgiving, the substances, the qualities of God that are at the core of life. This church was inspired by 18th century mystic. He was quite a famous scientist in his day, actually. Pretty advanced stuff. We have people getting Nobel Prizes today who credit Swedenborg, which was his name, for inspiring some of their work, especially in brain science. But his science gave rise to something greater, you could say, but something that also made him a little bit more of an outcast. His science gave rise to a spiritual awakening in his life. At least that's how he reported it. That's what his diaries say. And eventually, instead of writing tome after tome about neuroscience and where the soul is seated in the body and what have you, he eventually wrote about his visions of the afterlife and how he saw many different religions, many different cultures under the sun of heaven. Under the sun of heaven. And he said, although the Lord appears among the angels, he called people in heaven who had passed angels, the Lord also appears as that sun. That sun is an appearance, just like everything's an appearance, but an appearance of the truth of the matter, which is that God is the source of all love, all light and heat, all wisdom and love, the shining part of life, that light bulb going off in our head, the understanding, and also the heat of life, that love that gets us to get out of bed in the morning. And that God is the source of all those things, and the more we realize that that source is shared, that that source is our true empowerment, the more we see that sun in the afterlife, the more we see that sun. Funny enough. If we don't want to understand that, if we want to center in divisiveness, kind of like in this life, we find ourselves on a dark path, on the dark path. No matter how right we think we are. And so it's interesting that the light of heaven itself, the way the spirit beings, according to Swedenborg anyway, see, is the light of God. And as we know with our physical sun, that energy is the energy of life, even more so here. The source of all of the spiritual realm, according to this 18th century mystic. Now, I don't expect anyone to believe Swedenborg, but it is a beautiful thought experiment to think about how that sun is shared. And Swedenborg said that although the appearance is the sun is above and the people below, above in heaven is more within each of us, more within heaven. And even for the people who don't want to see the sun, who act out of hate, destructiveness, that sun is within. So we have much to give thanksgiving for. Much to be thankful for. That light of life is shared from each of us. We don't have to grasp. We don't have to grasp. So easy. We often feel on a precipice of some kind. We have much to be thankful for. And it's interesting to me that if you just think about it logically, we look at this universe, we wouldn't be here without the insects, without the animals, without the plants. The insects allow the fruiting plants to be pollinated. All these things allow for the evolution of humankind. The universe in itself is allowing for every single moment. You could say the universe is behind, literally, the interconnected universe. Quantum entanglement and all these physics things we don't quite understand. All these things coming together to make every moment what it is. And so even that challenge, even that thing that's bothering us today, is a gift in a way. It's presented thanks to the infinity of things that brought us to today. Think about all the things you've been through, the challenges, the beauty, the love, the joy, the family that each of you have had, have enjoyed, have shared this life with. All of that leading to even that moment of annoyance. And so in a way, thanklessness can even be an invitation, because it is so sometimes tough to hold that thankless feeling, to enter into a greater thanksgiving and to return to the knowledge that we are all one in God, in love, and we're in this together. And let's take a moment, closing our eyes as we feel called. Allowing the openness of the moment to come to our attention, whatever our feelings, whatever our thoughts. The spaciousness of this room is an idea in our heads, something we perceive and interpret. Our minds are more spacious. Our spirits are even more open. Able to hear and see and feel, smell, touch, imagine, think all at the same time. All at the same time. Presented to what? What are all these ideas presented to? What sees these things? An answer beyond words that sees words. Warmed in God's light and love, held. Christ gave miracles, performed miracles out of thankfulness, out of thanksgiving. Thanksgiving for life, for being with people, for wanting to help heal and seeing that healing occur and the joy that comes of it, the love, the connectedness. Christ's ministry was one of thanksgiving. That's perhaps why we don't need more thanks in Matthew chapter 8. So let's take a moment and open our hearts to that kind of thanksgiving.